Prelude official word swiftly reached the throne of Wakanda and the War Council of planet Eriko, formerly Mars, of the grand standoff between Wakanda and the Iraqi in the Cardassian region of deep space. The Iraqis had taken it upon themselves to speak for the Wakandans at a meeting with Cardassian traders. The Wakandans had objected, but the Iraqi insisted that they spoke on behalf of all the inhabitants of the Sol system because they had the might to do so. But the Wakandans retorted that their king the Black Panther was mightier and they would not submit to any other authority to represent them. The Cardassians took a neutral stance and would not sign any trade deals with either party until the conflict was resolved. Days later at the Iraqi Council meeting, war was declared on Wakanda on the grounds that they had to be made an example of to cement Eriko's right to lead the Sol system. The Regent of Sol, who was also the former wife of T'Challa the Black Panther, used her power of veto to quash the judgment, but she was overruled by the appearance of the reclusive council member Bragram the High Summoner. Bragram controlled all spiritual, unseen, and supernatural aspects of Eriko. He claimed that Wakanda's spiritual technology weapons were a great threat to Eriko and needed to be destroyed, so the council moved forward with war plans for Wakanda. Chapter 1 The Howl of the Great White Gorilla made it clear to T'Challa that he was trapped inside M'Baku's nightmare, and the Black Panther hastened his sprint along the open wagons of the moving freight train. There was a fight up ahead from the smell of laser beam residues and the sounds of fists clashing against metal. T'Challa leapt off the freight train and over the one that moved in the opposite direction, which carried heaps of broken crystal fauna and flora. He went between the skyscrapers into an avenue that was lit by the neon signs that ran on the sides of the buildings. Advertisements from Oscorp, Stark Industries, Timely Industries, Rahcon, and Starbucks flashed on the neon signs, while on the ground were e-waste items like broken computers and exposed modules. Conform. Conform were the words from the robots that fought with M'Baku. T'Challa produced a spear of light in his hand and he sent it through several of the hulking robots. A stray robot turned to him, so he jumped and struck it in the face with his knee. The Black Panther's meta-human strength knocked the head off the robot and it landed at M'Baku's feet. M'Baku lifted the head that was shaped like a black leopard's and he tossed it aside. Listen to me carefully. You are in a coma in King Mountain. Your cousin is the queen of the Jabari clan. There is an impending attack on Wakanda, so I came to the dreamscape to make a strategic deal with the Fear Lord Nightmare. He will honor the deal only if I get you to wake up, said T'Challa. So I am just supposed to put the discrimination of my clan on hold for the good of Wakanda and let the Black Panther get his victory? Asked M'Baku. I will not continue with that fantasy, so go to hell. M'Baku was skilled in multiple hand-to-hand combat techniques and he was agile for his height of 7 feet tall and brawny build. He moved fluidly from his spot to where T'Challa stood. His hands and feet targeted the Black Panther's heart, liver, throat, eyes, and crotch. T'Challa blocked all the attempts. Get this through your head, I am real. I came to the dreamscape physically through a machine and I can get out, but only through tunneling out of your subconsciousness, thereby killing you, said T'Challa. I rather die a man of conviction than to bow to an imbecile like you, so go ahead and leave. 1 billion enemy combatants are inbound to Wakanda while we squabble over who is the better man, said T'Challa. I am not closing ranks ever again as long as you are the Black Panther and the country follows your dogma. And you are just a figment of my imagination. The two were locked in a wrestling hold where no ground was given by either man. Then wish me away if you truly believe that I am another dream abstract, said T'Challa. T'Challa remembered that Nightmare had given him an hour to get the dreamer to wake up, and that time was nearly complete because of how long it took for T'Challa to run from Central City to the unrecognizable Jabari lands. I gave federal terms to the Jabari Queen, making the clan semi-autonomous, said T'Challa. It is the entire country that I want to take back to its roots of being able to commune with nature and the animals spiritually and not through machines. Then it is a technophobia that this nightmare setting is based on. You are afraid. M'Baku slammed T'Challa against a building as though the Black Panther was a tree trunk. Then M'Baku's shoulder tackled him into the interior of the building that was filled with e-waste. "You are sick, you need help," said T'Challa. A great white gorilla's dying howl was heard. "That is the last of the species which was made extinct by the destruction of its habitat by the foreign friends that you let into the country. This is my nightmare," shouted M'Baku. T'Challa sent a modified spear of light into his opponent's midsection. The tip avoided the organs but it damaged tissue and veins which M'Baku would die from without immediate medical treatment in the real world. Meanwhile the world of the dream call aspied around T'Challa, then his vision was filled by the sight of the giant nightmare seated on his black unicorn. "I am satisfied that your misery has just started with regards to this dreamer called M'Baku, so I will honor our agreement," said the Fear Lord, whose eye sockets were filled with a cluster of stars. T'Challa pressed his golden panther pendant and he was whisked to the real-world military lab in the techno-jungle. He ran out of the spiritual techno-machine that made the link to the dream space. He bypassed the technicians and took one of the emergency medical kits from the walls and then teleported into King Mountain. The Jabari Queen and her chief assistant were already tending to M'Baku, who was on a slab of broken ice. Without any words being said, T'Challa went between the queen and the assistant and he surgically mended the wound with tools from the medical kit. M'Baku breathed normally and his eyes opened. T'Challa backed away and gave a look of "He is your responsibility" to his co-conspirators because the three of them were secretly involved in the removal of M'Baku as king and his subsequent coma. Chapter 2 T'Challa gave the order for the military to delopy the mutant-targeted bombs in the dreamscape. The bombs were based off a machine that Wakanda had primarily created to spy on the mutant nation's Quiet Council through Jean Grey. The machine used tissue samples taken from the mutants Cable, Jean Grey, and James Braddock when they had visited Wakanda. Since Jean Grey was no longer on the Quiet Council, the technology was repurposed to preemptively decimate the fighting force of the mutant warrior nation of Araco. But M'Baku's remark that he did not want to close ranks made T'Challa ponder if his other meta-human enemies within Wakanda felt the same way. T'Challa took for granted that the patriotic code would always be enough to quash squabbles when the nation had to go to war. But could he count on the code now? Images of his meta-human enemies in Wakanda swirled around him. They were the Hechira, Mute, Queen Divine Justice, M'Baku, and the Watcher. His enemies were proof that Wakanda was not a utopia and far from a monolithic society that centered around the Black Panther political structure. Apart from the cousins Queen Divine Justice and M'Baku, the others had never worked together, which T'Challa saw as a strategic flaw if he had to marshal all of his country's forces. The next day T'Challa met the Hechira in a park while the man was out with his wife and infant. Zebras and antelopes walked near the group as T'Challa put forward his proposition. "I am assembling a special strike team for a behind enemy lines mission," said T'Challa. "The dogs of war are for those type of wet work," said the ex-military man. "They are not capable for this job and I don't want to needlessly lose the lives of good soldiers," said T'Challa. "Then they have gone soft in my absence," said the Hechira. "Perhaps, but the mission is to kill the chief summoner in Araco and sabotage their spiritual technology." "On Mars?" "Yes. I will consider it." A few hours later T'Challa was in the underground city where Mute was held as a prisoner. The skillful mutant telepath had sewn up in mouth during a mental breakdown and only communicated with his ability. "The mutants keep asking me to join their ranks. If I stay any longer in here I may just decide to do so," said Mute. "You will be going to Araco to see the mutant paradise up close," said T'Challa. "What is the catch?" T'Challa felt Mute trying to navigate the telepathic traps that were subconsciously planted into T'Challa. "The catch is that you will be accompanying a strike team." Mute got up from the floor of his cell and accepted the invitation. Another prisoner that T'Challa visited was off-world in the dimension controlled by the Time Variance Authority. The Watcher was held in the Tower of Time and he knelt respectfully to T'Challa when the Black Panther appeared. "How may I be of assistance, my king?" asked the Watcher, all the while he summoned his sword Skybreaker to his hand. The weapon flew from the nearby bloody armor and went to its master. Watcher had been paying off his debt to the Time Variance Authority by being their special enforcer. The arrangement was his idea because he could not return to Wakanda. "Now is the time for you to slowly repay your debt to Wakanda," said T'Challa, and he laid out the mission. The Watcher said, "Death to the summoner." Finally T'Challa went to the palace of Queen Divine Justice. Chapter 3. She was not there. An attendant said that the queen was not seen for hours, so T'Challa went to King Mountain but found no one. He had sleeper robotic spies in the Jabari lands but did want to activate them for such a minor incident. He deactivated his face shield and waited for an hour until the queen returned. "A child had fallen into an abandoned well. I rescued him and took him to his family where I spent the rest of the afternoon," said the queen. T'Challa gave her a look of, "Does M'Baku know the truth about our pact?" She shook her head to say no. "He is with his wife and children," said Queen Divine Justice. An ostrich walked in on T'Challa and the queen. The bird looked at the young woman and she returned the stare. T'Challa's hypersenses indicated that there was some sort of energy flow between the human and the animal. Then the ostrich walked out. "Now where were we?" asked the queen. "I am taking a kill squad to Mars to take out a target," replied T'Challa. "Mars? You meant to say Araki, the new capital planet of the solar system, a title that was once dedicated to Earth until the mutants made their power move. Have they reached out to you?" "I identify as Jabari and nothing else. I want you and M'Baku on the team," said T'Challa. "You are so full of..." She stopped mid-sentence and reflected. She made a smack sound with her lips. "Is your ex-wife the target?" "No, it is Necromancer," replied T'Challa. "So you are going to murder a citizen who is under the rulership of your ex-wife? Interesting. Why?" "I have intel that the Iraqi will be coming for Wakanda because of the political stance we have taken against the mutant nation," replied T'Challa. "There is no we, it is only you, because as I recall there was no referendum or input from Wakandans on how we felt about the mutant nation. So this country is going to attack us due to your actions. My cousin was right about you. Wakanda has never been conquered, and to keep that legacy intact I went outside the nation to represent us on an intergalactic level so that only Wakandans spoke for Wakandans, not the Fantastic Four, not the Avengers and not the X-Men. The mutants want to speak for humanity, which includes Wakanda, and that goes against national policy, hence the stance that was taken," said T'Challa. Queen Divine Justice made a slow hand clap. "Retrofitted history really suits you. Remember, I lived in the foreign lands also, and I heard the rumors about the suave king of the mysterious Wakanda and the ladies." The unfiltered attitude of the queen was one of the reasons T'Challa wanted her on the team. "The mission begins in 3 days, said T'Challa. "Who ordered the attack on Wakanda if your ex-wife is charge?" "She is not in charge, the Regent of Seoul is a figurehead for now. Another thing is that M'Baku will not be coming, I am sure of it. Yes, he will come to protect his only cousin from my influence." "You are such a manipulator." Next story, A Message to the Regent of Seoul. Chapter 1. T'Challa looked down from his throne at the warriors he had summoned. The insurrectionist Hatra, the seditionists Jabari, Queen Divine Justice and her cousin M'Baku, the acolyte the Watcher, and finally the victim of society Mute. "Thank you for coming. I know it must be hard given each of your personal history with me. To be honest, I don't want to work with you, but for the sake of Wakanda I have to do so," said T'Challa. He clasped his hands and a hologram of Bragram appeared between the throne and the gathering. The mutant wizard was ashen but with dark circular markings on his chests and face. His eyes were made from metal and his hair was lily white. This is our target. He is a servant of the Dweller in the Darkness and he has replaced his eyes with the Erico metal called Mysterium to harness its mystical powers in order to increase his own, said T'Challa. Who is the Dweller in the Darkness? Asked Queen Divine Justice. He was involved in the destruction of the last known universe, replied T'Challa. The Dweller in the Darkness provides legions of demons to his servants as gifts and hence the reason I called this group and not the regular Wakanda forces. Bagram is pushing a war with Wakanda and when we kill him then our enemy will concede. Are you sure? Asked Hachira. He could become a matter. No. Bagram is hated by the populace of Erico because he was the warden at their re-education schools when the civilization lived in another dimension. Mutants form a unique identity with their powers and Bagram violated the identities of his prisoners when he mixed their blood with demons. He will not be missed, replied T'Challa. You seem so sure like there is something you are not telling us, said the Watcher. I am giving you all that is necessary to complete the mission. We leave for Mars in an hour, said T'Challa. In the meantime mingle with each other as your teamwork will determine the outcome of this mission. Chapter 2 T'Challa spied on the group as they got into an agreement over the seditionist movement of the Jabari. Hachira and Watcher objected to the semi-autonomous arrangements that T'Challa made with Queen Divine Justice. Meanwhile the telepath Mute remained aloof. You are one to talk when you ran a secret society in Wakanda, said M'Baku and he stood face to face with Hachira. Move or be carried off little man, said Hachira. Knock it off, said Queen Divine Justice and she used her mutant power to create a spike made from ice that emerged from the ground and separated the two men. Mute grinned and Watcher commented on his sewn-up mouth. Did you do that to yourself? Asked Watcher. Yes, replied Mute telepathically in the minds of all the group members. They looked at the diminutive mutant uneasily. So what do you guys think? Is T'Challa being on the level with us? Asked Queen Divine Justice. Absolutely not, replied Watcher. But at least we are not expendable or a suicide squad because I have a country to get back to ruling after this is done, said Queen Divine Justice. Maybe this mission is his way to get rid of you, said Mute. It is too elaborate a plot even for him, said Queen Divine Justice. T'Challa felt sorry for her because of the naivety she displayed. She was a young ruler who was in her 20s and she had not grasped the horrific pitfalls that lay on her path. T'Challa returned to the group with bracelets that were needed to operate in the spiritual realm on Mars. Chapter 3 The Earth-bound mutant nation of Krakow had terraformed Mars as a gift to their cousins the Iraqi. The dead planet had turned into a tropical paradise in 7 hours and was declared the capital planet of the solar system. There was a metropolitan spaceport, a diplomatic center and orbital space station. The valuable mutant metal of Mysterium which rivaled Vibranium was loaded on the merchant ships that constantly flew in and out of the planet. But the spirit world was a stark contrast. The green bodies of monsters, humanoids, and other undescribable dead creatures were piled on top each other. They were the legacy of unknown and unseen wars that plagued Mars from its creation. T'Challa led his forces to the prison door of the vile school where mutants once had their identities stripped from them. Why not a sneak attack? Asked Hachira. Because as a wizard Bagram should have foreseen our arrival and our intent, replied T'Challa. The towering door vanished and the screams of people came out suddenly from the darkness that was behind the door. Then T'Challa's hyper senses told him that a creature was coming towards the group like a bullet train. Scatter out, shouted the Black Panther. No sooner had he said those words than a grey goo bursted out of the doorway and almost crushed the group in its path. It resembled ink and it rose into the air then sprouted 10 limbs that it tried to squish the Wakandans with. Hachira transformed from a man into a savage Hulk-like creature, Queen Divine Justice used her mutant powers to send ice daggers into the beast. Watcher fired neutron blasts from his sword and M'Baku along with Mute did nothing. T'Challa gave them an authoritative glare and they stared back at him in defiance. Locust-like insects then appeared and they went at M'Baku and Mute. The stings from the locusts created boils on their skins and then Mute used his telepathy to take over the minds of the beasts and the insects fell to the ground. The white gorilla blood in M'Baku's body gave him the rapid healing factor to remove the boils from the skin. T'Challa created 2 spears of light in his hands and he threw them into the doorway. The weapons exploded and temporarily cleared the passage of any more defenses. Meanwhile, Hatra, Queen Divine Justice and Watcher cut the ink beast in half and subdued it. Finally Bragram floated out of the ash and embers of the destroyed passageway. Human pest, have you come to send a message to the Regent of Soul that you can defy the power of Eriko, or are you here to be educated on your rightful place in the universe? Asked the High Summoner. Next story, Where Wakandans Dare Chapter 1. T'Challa waited patiently for the betrayal of Mute. In the meantime the mutant was crucial to the attack on Bragram because his telepathy interfered with the wizard's spell casting. The rest of the team of M'Baku, Queen Divine Justice, Hatra, and Watcher battled the legions of demons that Bragram had summoned while T'Challa fought the Omega Mutant. T'Challa suspected that Mute would become a traitor because the former prisoner had nothing in Wakanda to return to after the mission. Mute's life was a series of unfortunate events that began when he was discovered to be a mutant and was enrolled in the Red Rock School to teach him to use his skills for the benefit of Wakanda. He hid his psychopathic tendencies from the tests at the school by abusing flaws in the system. Mute's attempted murder of his classmates finally drew authorities to the years of abnormal behavior that had gone unnoticed. Ironically, Mute blamed the system and T'Challa for not finding out in time because he saw himself as a victim of uncontrollable circumstances. Mute's case changed everything about the mutant program and the military in Wakanda. Screenings for mental disorders became more complicated and stringent. The pivot in the battle finally came as Mute left the courtyard and Bragram seized the opportunity to invoke a time-lapse spell which left T'Challa frozen. Luckily the Black Panther had his force field up so Bragram was unable to strike a killing blow with his necrosword. Instead he tactically retreated into his abandoned prison complex. Chapter 2. T'Challa was able to move once Bragram left and he assisted the other Wakandans to swiftly subdue to the demons. "Where is Mute?" asked Queen Divine Justice. "He went that way," replied Watcher and pointed to a corridor. "He is a coward," said M'Baku. "I doubt that, as there seems more to this. T'Challa might have sent him on a secret mission," said Hatra. T'Challa was not moved to respond. "Strategically we cannot leave him to be captured," said Queen Divine Justice. T'Challa generated a holographic map and gave it to her. "I will go after Mute but the rest of you will track down our enemy," said T'Challa. "Work together as a team. I will rejoin you soon." Then he teleported into the corridor that Mute had gone into. Based on the map, Mute was headed for the portal to the Dweller in the Darkness. T'Challa assumed Mute and the entity had made telepathic contact, but the madman did not have a clue of the level of insanity that the Dweller in the Darkness possessed. T'Challa trusted M'Baku's tracking skills to find Bragram, and the powerhouses of Hatra, Queen Divine Justice and the Watcher were capable as a team to hold their own against the wizard, but Mute was still needed to ensure the victory. T'Challa met Mute convulsing on the floor that was stained in the blood of millions of mutants, and he felt the presence of the Dweller in the Darkness. The presence was like a boulder pushing down on one's body. "Only a handful of individuals can reach this close to me," said the Dweller in the Darkness. He was invisible even for T'Challa's hypervision sense. "Wakandans are hardy people," said T'Challa. "And crafty as well, since you were able to turn Bragram's former friend Isksa the Unbeaten into your ally. She supplied you with the maps and times that Bragram would be present here," said the Dweller in the Darkness. She did horrendous things as well in these dungeons where mutants' minds were broken and their bodies were sewn together, so to speak, with my children of the darkness. They were not children, they were vile demons, said T'Challa. I will not indulge you in banter nor engage you in battle because I have seen your record when it comes confrontations with gods. You even tamed my friend Galactus at one point, said the Dweller in Darkness. But I will barter with you. Give me Mute and I will give you safe passage from this prison complex. T'Challa couldn't tell if the god was bluffing him. You must be saying that I, T'Challa, who dared to fight Khonsa the moon god, the mad titan Thanos and Mephisto, can certainly take on this old backwater creature from bygone multiverses, but you will be wrong. I know where your bombs are located in the spiritual realm and I can stop their deonations, said the Dweller in the Darkness. T'Challa placed Mute onto his shoulder and said, no deal. I wonder what your girlfriend Storm, the so-called Regent of Soul, will say when I tell her about you and her fellow council member Isksa, especially since they were forming such a cordial relationship with each other, said the Dweller in the Darkness. Suddenly T'Challa sensed a change in Mute's health, and then he was struck with a telepathic blast from the mutant that broke through his psi shields. T'Challa staggered as his legs wobbled and he fell. Mute got up and said telepathically to the god, I told you that he would never admit to his crimes. You were correct, said the Dweller in the Darkness. I appreciate the power boost that you gave me, and now tell Bagram that the Black Panther is a non-factor, so he should reveal his true power to the other Wakandans, said Mute. Next story, Cleaning House Chapter 1. You are a drain on Wakandan society. The resources that are used to imprison you could be put to better use. That's the reason I brought you on this team, as a form of restorative justice for your crimes. But instead you betrayed Wakanda's wartime code and made an attempt on my life. I am in my right as king to kill you for treason, said T'Challa. T'Challa walked down the staircase that was attached to a wall of computer mainframes. The glass panels of the mainframe computers formed into the face of Bagram. The collage represented the computers in the real world that were linked to the techno wristband that T'Challa had given to Mute. Whenever Mute had entered Bagram's mind, the wristband captured pertinent information from the wizard. The entire scheme was based on Wakanda's combination of spiritual and technological weapons. Mute looked up at the Black Panther with bitterness in his eyes. You are the devil and far worse than the Dweller in the Darkness. You used me to map Bagram's mind. That explains why there is no one from the Mystic clan on the team, because you don't want them to get a chance of having any of Bagram's spells, said Mute. T'Challa was disappointed that such an intelligent man seemed to be irredeemable. Mute had broken into T'Challa's mind with telepathy, so the Black Panther showed him what was really taking place on the mission. You are correct that the Mystic clan was deliberately left out, but not for the reason you mentioned, said T'Challa. However, let us deal with where we are. You have assisted in taking down of an enemy of Wakanda, don't spoil it by becoming a new enemy. I don't care anymore. I have the ability to rival Professor X now, said Mute. T'Challa manifested a manila folder and tossed it to Mute. Written on it were the words Protocols for Professor X. There was a single sheet inside of it that read, Background, Professor Charles Xavier is the premier Omega-level telepath. Recent activity, Professor X entered the home of Dr. Reed Richards and erased vital information from the man's mind, then told the victim the information would never be retrievable. The information regarded Dr. Richards' invention that was built to save his son from the clutches of the mutants. Xavier then had the invention destroyed. Conclusion: the blatant demonstration of telepathic intrusion into a mind that was fortified with psi shields showed that such defenses were useless against a powerful telepath. The Black Panther should not be vulnerable to such penetrative attacks by anyone. Should an intruder get past the psi shields, then comes. T'Challa stood directly in front of Mute. Professor X level power means nothing to me, said the Black Panther. So again will you finish the mission and get your life back together? I want to kill people. It might be abhorrent to you but I need it like air to breathe, replied Mute. Then I will give you the opportunity to kill as much as you need. In exchange you will fulfill your duty to fight against Wakanda's external enemies when called upon to do so, said T'Challa. Or you can continue down the path as a henchman for the Dweller in the Darkness and be hunted down for the rest of your life. My goodness, and they call me a psychopath, said Mute. Yes or no? Asked T'Challa. Yes, replied Mute. Chapter 2 I must commend you for making such an effort for one of your own, said the Dweller in the Darkness to T'Challa when the Black Panther regained consciousness and got onto his feet. It shows that you have balanced your good and evil natures. You are wrong because I am not evil, said T'Challa. Then how will you fulfill your promise to the killer? Asked the Dweller in the Darkness. Wait and see, replied T'Challa. The Black Panther knew that the old god would be intrigued. T'Challa teleported Mute and himself to the battle between Bagram and the rest of the team. You have finished your side quest, said 100 Bagrams that were engaged in fights with the strike team. It was not a side quest. Mute kindly dispatch of the wizard's clones, said T'Challa. The Black Panther then ran forward to the Bagram that his hyper senses indicated was the original. The rest the team followed his lead. The Watcher created a time delay barrier around the wizard to prevent teleportation. M'Baku used his heightened speed to break Bagram's shins with a knob carry. Hachira took a point-blank necro blast from the wizard that burnt him down to his skeleton, but his accelerated healing factor regenerated his body in an instant and he punched Bagram off his feet. Queen Divine Justice created blades of ice that cleaved Bagram in mid-air. T'Challa finished the sequence with a spear of light into the target's skull. I hate to ask, but is that it? Asked Queen Divine Justice. No. He will likely have a spare clone in another location, replied T'Challa. But Mute's contribution has nullified that circumstance. The Black Panther surveyed the dead clones that were scattered in the chamber. Chapter 3 Wakanda T'Challa spoke to Isksa the Unbeaten through their secure channel. With Bagram gone there is no need to continue our arrangement. As the head of Erico's War Council I assure you that there will be a de-escalation of war from Erico against Wakanda, said Isksa. Likewise Wakanda will also de-escalate from a frontal confrontation, said T'Challa. Good, that just leaves the proxy wars to sort out. I would rather not have casualties from these minor incidents, said Isksa. I concur. Wakanda's ambassador at the Erico Diplomatic Center will submit a rules of engagement document to your office through formal conventions, said T'Challa. After the meeting T'Challa appraised the cohesiveness of the team of his personal enemies. Then he went to check on Mute.